Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm super excited to be here today. We have fitness family in the house. You know, these are some of my favorite conversations because CrossFit's an amazing filter for our varsity humans. And when you come to the gym, you're dressed in workout gear. No one knows who does what or anything, passions, background, anything. So it's really cool when you start to get to talk to some of your fellow varsity humans and figure out what they do. So I'm excited to welcome Brian Dougherty to the mic. He is a former Navy SEAL, husband, father, and entrepreneur. On Turmeric and Tequila, we've covered a lot of things, consumer packaged goods. You know, I geek out on health and wellness. He has founded a watch company and is really passionate about timepieces. So this is something we've never covered before. So we got talking. I'm like, Brian, you got to come on and tell this journey. So without further ado, Brian, welcome to TNT.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your show. And now I feel like the pressure's on since you've never had this topic before. But I guess that's what makes your podcast good.
Yes, I like to apply the pressure right as you guys get on the mic, so you feel good coming in. Then it's like just like CrossFit, like you think it's good, and 3, 2, 1, you get smacked in the face.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, it is. But that's what we sign up for. So you know, we're masochists at heart. I think that's the piece of the pie. Well, before we get into the Declan James watches, they are absolutely fabulous and beautiful. I always want to unpack the human behind the mission before the mission itself. So give us a little intel around young Brian and why you are the way you are today.
Oh man,
loaded question.
It's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. Originally from Colorado, born and raised. I grew up in a loving household, supportive household. I have 2 older brothers. You know, if we were poor, I didn't know it. If we were rich, I didn't know it. You know, my mom raised me to be caring and have compassion. I think my father and my brothers, you know, had a hand in me being, I was raised to be aggressive and not take crap from anyone. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just was happy all the time. I never had a bad childhood. Riding bikes in the fields, having bottle rocket wars, playing with guns and GI Joes, you know, all that stuff that I think little boys should be doing. It's a little bit different now, but yeah, it was a good childhood. I have nothing to complain about.
That's awesome. Where'd you go to high school?
Smoky Hill High School.
When'd you graduate?
In 2000. Are you about to tell me you went to Smoky Hill also?
I went to Eagle Crest High School and I graduated at 99. So there's a 100% probability we crossed paths, probably Absolutely. At some lame house party or something. Absolutely. And I didn't realize you were born and raised Colorado, and you literally went to school up the street. So we 100% knew each other.
Where did you live then?
We lived in Shenango. So I wasn't close to Eagle Crest, but this was before Grandview and everything else was built. So I commuted. Well, I guess it was a 10-minute commute. I don't know if I can say commuted, but I came from, it was Aurora back in the day, and they redrew the lines now. So it's Centennial. Yep. So I was about 10 minutes from Eagle Crest. Where did you live?
In Smoky Hill, really Smoky Hill and Buckley is like the main cross streets. So I think we were right down the street. I'm drawing a blank where Shenango is.
Parker and Arapahoe, it's like if you kept going down Arapahoe, it's like right on your left towards Elizabeth and everything, and you kind of wind in. It's like a horse easement neighborhood, if that makes sense.
Yes. Did you have horses?
No. And this is so my dad, because you know him, and I'll say this, he's like, we always ask him, like, why do we get horses? And I quote, he said, because they take big dumps. I'm like, okay. So it's so, and I hate that word. I hate saying it. So anyways, if you know my dad, that was exactly the reason, and verbatim the reason. So the quote, I should say.
That's funny.
I know. So we did not grow up with horses, but we did play sports. So that's wild. We probably crossed paths actually at that Taco Bell that I think is still there. Where all like the kids used to congregate.
Off Smoky Hill and Buckley, the corner, right? Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
It's still there. I think it's still there.
Well, we survived. We made it out. Look at this. Look at us now. This is where we are. So,
Well, we have
anyways,
so much to talk about then.
yeah, we'll get back to what's actually interesting. People don't have to hear our street cred of Aurora, Colorado. Okay, so we loving childhood, everything's good. Tell me about like the high school to college transition, because obviously you made a big leap as into our forces and eventually Navy SEAL.
Yeah, so high school was fine. I never would consider myself like a great student. I always loved school, and looking back, I think I love school just because of the friends and the relationships and all that stuff. But by no means was I a great student in the sense that I applied myself. So high school was fine. I played lacrosse and tried a few other sports, but like lacrosse was my sport. And then I went to college up at CSU and studied finance. And it was what I deemed the typical college experience, which I don't know. I had two older brothers, so people who had older siblings, I think they can relate a little bit. Like, I went to college thinking it was going to be like Animal House, the movie, right? And to a certain degree, it was. I had a lot of fun. If I could go back and redo it, I might do it differently, but that was my experience. In high school, I'd be visiting my brothers who were in college, so I just got exposed to, like, I guess, the Animal House scene, if you will, good, bad, or indifferent. Like I said, I studied finance, and then after college, I got a degree working in commercial real estate for, I think, 6 years.
Okay.
No, I did that for 10. So yeah, for 6 years. And then when I was 29, I had decided to join the military with aspirations of becoming a Navy SEAL. And that's what I did.
Wait, is there an age cutoff with that? Like with
Yeah.
applying, I know there is, but even training to be a SEAL, do they cut you off?
Yeah, so if you're a civilian, so I actually signed a contract when I was 28. And
Okay.
so you have to sign a contract before you're 29 as a civilian. And if you're in the military, at least at the time, I'm not sure what the requirement is now, you can try out to be a SEAL if you're 32 or 33.
Okay.
And there's always waivers, so there's always exceptions.
That's wild. Well, number one, I played lacrosse. So like I said, I can't believe we haven't had this conversation yet, and played in college out east. However, obviously played at Eagle Crest, and then I got my real estate license after after college. So not commercial, residential.
This is
But
interesting.
anyways, yeah, all these common denominators we missed over. We just deadlifts was enough. So what was the pivot point? Because and my brother actually was similar, went to Cornell, played lacrosse, and then did the 9-to-5 thing, successful corporate job, dropped everything and went into special forces. What was like the trigger point, no pun intended, of you being like, okay, I want to get out of civilian life and head into military opportunity?
In college, I was having a difficult time like adjusting. And it was like I was staying up real late and then sleeping in class. And so my mom had said something to me to the sense of like, you need to start exercising so you can just exhaust yourself and exhaust your mind and go to sleep at night. And so I started doing that, and I got into exercising. And through exercising, I started Googling, and I don't even know Google was around then, but I started searching workouts, and I came across like Navy SEAL workouts, and I just like latched on to that. And I became so obsessed about that. And so that's what I did. I worked out and I got really into fitness and everything. And then I graduated college and my eyesight was bad. So I got my eyesight fixed. And then at around 26, I was enlisted to go to the Navy. And this is super common. At the time I was dating this girl, and I basically got cold feet. And so I backed out of the military and continued to work. And this was during the Great Recession. And so things were not fun, not interesting. And I was doing apartment acquisitions and dispositions for a large apartment company, and they weren't doing anything. And I was lucky enough. I had worked for a boss who was an Army Ranger, and he comes up to me. He's like, listen, Brian, you need to do this now, or you're going to hate yourself for the rest of your life. And this was like when I was 29. He's like, and my company was laying people off. He's like, I'll keep you around as long as I can, so you can get in shape, you can get your act together, and I'll see you off. And that's what I did. And so I was obsessed about it in college, never really had the courage to execute this obsession until I was 28, 29. And that's what I did. I just, my boss encouraged me to do it, and he was right. It was one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. And so it was a long journey to get there. It was a long obsession, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's just fascinating to me because it's such a switch. And I think it's, I wouldn't really compare it to playing D1 sports, but kind of, it's like, it's either there, or it's not. And it's such a commitment. Like it's either within or it's not. There's really not gray area, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm just always curious, like, what was it that, like, when you say obsession, what was it that really had you obsessed? Was it the camaraderie, the commitment, the fitness? Like, what was it that was like just such a hook in you?
It looked hard.
Okay.
I mean, as simple as that. I'm like, this looks cool. Like, this looks fun. This looks hard. This looks cool. And I really can't, I don't know any other way to explain it. I mean, I remember being in my apartment in college, looking through like a Navy SEAL book and just like, this just looks cool and this looks fun. Yeah. And it looks hard. It just looked like something that I wanted to go do that excited me. And it took me time to get there.
That's awesome. Well, for our young people listening, we have a lot of local Colorado humans. That's why I love unpacking our Colorado ethos. What is it? Because I think when we see hard things, our generation, that was something. I do think it's also nurture and nature, some genetics and some environment where you're just used to doing hard things. I do think as our kiddos are coming up in the generation below us, hard things get a little bit scary. And I almost blame us as adults for making things easier for our young people when we probably shouldn't. What is it that when you saw that hard thing, was there something within you? It's like, I want to do that hard thing versus it looks hard, I don't want to do it.
No, it was, this looks hard, I want to do it. Yeah. And I don't know why. I think I have this theory that like our access to survival is not even arm's reach away. I mean, we don't have to do much to survive in today's age, right? It's not like we're going out to hunting. It's not like we got to go carry buckets of water. And I think, for me, I didn't have to survive. Like, I had great parents. We didn't have to go do all this stuff. And so life was just, at the time when I was working, like life was boring. I wasn't thriving. I failed to launch. I wasn't excited about anything. It was just like 9 to 5 blasé. I show up to work and life became very uninteresting to me. And I think that had a lot to do with it too.
Absolutely. Did it impact your mental health? Did you have conversations of mental health in this period? Because I mean, this is convo that's taken off in the past 10 years. I certainly didn't grow up with it. And hence we're passionate about it on the podcast. But was that a piece of your puzzle?
No, mental health. No, like mental health has evolved since 20 years ago. Like mental health was like someone who had suicidal thoughts, and there's so much more to it than just that, right? But I think looking back, had I not gone down this journey, I probably would have developed some severe mental health issues, quite frankly.
Absolutely. When I tore my ACL in college, it was my first awareness of like, oh, my identity. I traveled all this 2,000 miles to go to a top 20 D1 team. I'm finally playing. And just like that, I'm out and my entire world crashes and lost 20 pounds and was just depressed and no conversation on mental health. But I'm kind of glad it happened because I could see, what that difference was and how to gain some skills on how to unpack it. And I really learned how to appreciate physical fitness in my team, the community, all the things that I wasn't showing up for were the reasons I continued to show up after I got healthy. And those challenges and those hard things, I really do ironically think saved me in a way and got me back on path. And do you think like CrossFit has kind of continued that for your physical and mental health as an adult?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's worth noting that when I was little, and they called it yogging back in the day instead of jogging, right?
Absolutely.
My dad would run these races and he got me into running. And then, so I was somewhat always into fitness, or I always enjoyed running. And then fast forward to college, I got back into fitness, and that really saved, I guess you can call it mental health. That kind of like saved me and put me back on the right track. And then I did it in the military. When I got out, I was always into fitness, but I never was, like, the job came first, right? Like the job always came first. And so like fitness was always the first thing to go. And then I found CrossFit, and I feel like it kind of saved me again, right? I was telling your father that my only regret is not doing this sooner. And I think what's good about CrossFit and it's saving me, so to speak, is, people like you and people like myself, we're sports cars,
Yeah.
right? And so we constantly have to be in like the race or whatever it is, and we have to do hard things to continue to feel like we're a sports car. And if we don't have that outlet, like we still want to race, and if we
Yeah.
don't have that outlets, I think that's when, for me at least, trouble sets in and whatever it might be. But yeah, CrossFit, I've never felt better. I can't remember the last time I felt this good.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, CrossFit kind of whoops your ass. Like it breaks you down and builds you up at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's that community, it's conversation, it's people being excited to see you and you're excited to see them. It's all the in
Yeah.
between that I champion so much at this day, because this race car is breaking down.
Yeah.
I do a lot in health and wellness so I can, be on the trend setting tip of what's next to keep my body and mind together and stay out here. But it's a constant journey, but I agree with you. It's a saving grace. When did you start CrossFit?
December of 2023.
Oh, okay. So you're newer to it.
It cracks me up every
you're-
time you guys say that. I feel like whatever the math is, I've been doing it for like 8 months or whatever.
Yeah. You're brand new. Now your body's fresh to go. You're good to go.
Yeah. But it's interesting though, because as we talk about this and I look back, like it's just a reoccurring theme in my life. Like fitness has been a theme in my life. I told you I was never really a good student, but I enjoyed school because of the relationships and my friends. I got that in the military also, close friendships, relationships, hard stuff, fitness. And then now CrossFit's kind of the same thing. It's hard, it's the relationships, it's the community, and it's fitness. So it's like these reoccurring themes just keep happening in my life.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're religious or spiritual or whatever. On the podcast, I always say God, universe, Madonna, whatever you believe. Big Madonna fan. It's funny how we can be really intentional humans and choose our paths and show up for certain things. And when you really pull back and take that perspective, it's like, oh, well, it was kind of happening without me controlling it, without me like having this tight grip on the next step. And it's like, oh, and it's something I still try and work on to this day, of like letting go just enough for like destiny to happen, but also not me like work harder, train harder, do more. It's like you can just breathe, and larger order is in play in some capacity.
Yeah.
It gets in there. Okay, so I want to talk about Declan James watches. This is really cool. I watched some of your YouTube stuff, and it's very close to your heart. It's generational, and I'm not going to read the bio, but I do want to read what you have on there. It says, "We continue to serve humbly as a veteran-owned business. We understand the service and sacrifice of America's warriors. Our company was founded on the principles of service, and we are dedicated to supporting the brave individuals who have sacrificed so much for our freedom. This is why, with every purchase, we make a 10% donation to honor the Navy SEAL Foundation. Their mission is to provide critical support for those warriors, veterans, and families of naval special warfare." So not only are your company out here doing it, which entrepreneurship is hard, so that fits. It's mission driven and it's intentional of serving a greater good beyond yourself.
Yeah. I originally started Declan James because I love watches, and I think this over time it's kind of evolved, and I wanted to give back something to my kid. I learned my time in the service was so valuable to me. I feel like I learned all of life's lessons in the military, and I wanted to teach these lessons to my kids, And I thought, like, what better way to do that through entrepreneurs? I'm like, I think because there's a lot of similarities. Like, it's hard. You get knocked down, you got to pick yourself back up, and there's moments of self-doubt, and there's moments of like, why am I doing this? Like I experienced all that in the military.
Yeah.
And I wanted my kids to see like these struggles. I wanted to teach them these lessons in life of picking yourself back up. And the goal was to have them learn this through them seeing me struggle. Right. Mm-hmm. And then as over time evolved, and this, I started interacting with more veterans since I got out in 2018. And I realized that I'm going to say this from the bottom of my heart. They have a lot of issues. We have a lot of issues, and they take on a lot of baggage, and there's just not, they just have a lot of issues. Right. And I think it's kind of messed up in the sense that our government asks us to go do stuff for them, and they don't really do anything on the back end to help veterans, right? And that's why there's all these organizations such as the Navy SEAL organization, there's the Green Beret organization, all that stuff. And I wanted to give back because I feel fortunate enough that I can give back, and I want to help my fellow veterans. I want to help people succeed, and I want to be there for veterans, much like when I got out, veterans were there for me. And so that's why the mission has kind of evolved, is to giving back to the community. And through all this stuff, hopefully my kids learn this stuff, right?
Yeah.
When I got out of, I fell in love with America a couple times in my life. The second time that I fell in love with America is when I got out of the military and veterans came out. Literally, veterans would call me up, people I didn't know, people I'd meet on the street, and they'd be like, how can I help you? What do you need from me? And so experiencing that just warmed my heart and made me fall in love with America again. And that's why I really am passionate about making sure other veterans are okay and giving back.
That's amazing. And I wish our news media, social media covered more of that conversation, especially upon an election year. We've got such a divisiveness in the air, in the atmosphere. And the reality is everyone's here, regardless of who you're voting for, to support our men and women of service, or I'd say at least 99%, whoever you're voting for, whatever you believe. I really do. We have so many patriots in our country, meaning humans that really do love America, or at minimum love the humans that sacrifice to protect our freedoms. I really believe in that conversation and that stance. And I love that you highlight that, because we don't talk about that enough. It's just always one side or the other. When the reality is, when push comes to shove, humans do show up for humans. And especially when they see they're sacrificing, on our behalf, it is a big deal. And we just we just don't talk about it enough. So it's good. And I love, this is why we have the podcast, that you felt that someone showing up for you, and then you wanted to model that behavior in return, which is influencers at its finest. Influencers, of course, is a cringy word at this point in time, but showing and leading by example is what it is. And that's, in my opinion, the most important thing in this world, aka, really intentional marketing. I don't love business, making everything a business in business terms. But if we're breaking down human behavior and why we do the things we do, I really do believe it comes back to intrinsic motivation, and then how we're walking through this world and who's around us that's inspiring us or influencing us to think and believe and do things a certain way. So it's amazing when we have, our varsity humans really intentionally trying to walk in this world a certain way. Now, this is the kicker, though, and I love the merge of things, turmeric and tequila, of you've got this heart space, this passion, and then we're going to bring in watches. Like these are two worlds that you might not put together, but here they so eloquently fit together. Hence, why watches? Like, tell me about this love affair with timepieces, why it's meaningful to you. Like, what's up with that?
I don't know. I was in grade school, and I had a friend give me a watch for my birthday. It was like a shark watch. And I don't know how old I was. I must have been in like third, maybe fourth grade, somewhere around that age. And ever since then, I just fell in love with watches. And I think this is common. I mean, there are other men who are into watches too. And I just fell in love with watches. And over the course of my life, like you could just give me a watch for my birthday for Christmas, and I would still be so happy. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it's another watch. It's like, yes, it's another watch, right? And so I just became known as the person in my family who loved watches. And it just, when I was getting out of the military, everyone says follow your passion, do something. And so I just thought, what about watches? Like, that's what I love. That's what I want to do. And that's what I did.
So was it like, did your grandfather have a watch? Was it in your family at like a relevant conversation? Was this just solely a Brian thing?
This was solely a Brian thing.
Okay. That's wild. Okay.
But what's great about watches is if you Google this, like, it is in people's family. Like, people will talk about the watch their grandfather gave them and their dad gave them. They'll get emotional about it. So it's definitely a thing for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's generational. And it is something that can last forever. For entrepreneurs listening, and again, this is a very niche community, and you have pretty big conglomerates running that arena of goods. What was like your first step getting into the watch community where it's not really topic of conversation? Like, how did you know what to do starting a watch company?
So I was still in the military and I was an instructor at BUDS, which is Navy SEAL selection, basically. So I was like a drill sergeant. And I was working Hell Week, which is the culmination of, it's not the culmination, it is like the final like gate, test gate of like, okay, you want to be here. So basically it's a week of being up straight. You get maybe 4 hours of sleep, and there's a bunch of like evolution. You just get hazed, essentially, appropriately hazed for, if anyone important is listening.
Yeah. Don't worry. No one is, just us.
And so I was working Hell Week with someone who also has a watch company. And at the time, I was just tinkering around with like building a couple watches, and I was struggling doing it. So I talked to him and I was asking him questions on how he did this. And he's like, and basically we geeked out. We geeked out to the point where people, our superiors, like, guys, we got things to do. We're not talking about watches anymore. But bottom line is he said, he said, you can have a watch company. I did it. If I did it, you can do it. And he said, if you're going to do it, I would go. He said, you need to go to the Hong Kong Watch and Clock Fair. It's a trade show.
Okay.
He's like, I wish I did that my first time. So I thought about it. And a week later, I booked a ticket to Hong Kong. And basically, it's suppliers, designers. I mean, everyone in the watch, Rolex goes there, Omega goes there. I went there. So it's a place to go meet and get things rolling. And so I went there, and I started off in the middle of the convention. That's where like Rolex and Omega hang out. And then quickly I just like circled and circled. And the next thing I know, I was talking to people by the men's restroom, like my people, right? People who would talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just made relationships, and I just made relationships. And I will fully admit that my buddy helped me get started. But aside from his help, I just started figuring things out and asking questions. The great thing about today is it's not too hard to do a lot of stuff, right? Like, you can manufacture your own stuff. You can do whatever it is. That's not the hard part. I think the hard part's really the marketing and running the business. Like, we have access to that now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think starting something's one thing always, whatever it is, and staying in it is a whole other.
Absolutely.
And staying relevant. And it's that constant conversation of, I'm doing this, I see the dream, I see the why. And then there's your really hard days where I'm like, what the F am I doing? Why am I doing this? Does it matter? Does anyone care? Is this ever going to work? Like, it's this constant battle of like balancing, the devil and the angel on the shoulder. And I think it's kind of good because it is hard. It keeps you on your toes. There's not really an off day, and there's not really an off time. Like, it's constantly evolving thing. And with the landscape of our world, with changing social media and internet and everything, there is access to everything. Like, it's the marketplace is changing. We talked about jewelry stores, so the brick and mortar is closing down and everything going digital. Like, everything, it's just a constant race to stay up and in it.
Yeah.
Has your business changed, or when did you start it?
So I started in like 2018, 2019.
Okay. And has it evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. It's evolved. It's evolved tremendously. I'm not really into social media and posting. Like, that's just not me.
Yeah.
And then when I tried getting into it, like, I just get so stressed about it. I would like spend, 45 minutes doing like the quote unquote greatest post. And then I post it, and my brother calls me up. He's like, dude, you spelt this word wrong. And I'm like, oh my God. And that was like consistent, right? And so I was like, I don't like this. I'll do it. Yeah. But I do like, that's not my business model. Like, I'm not selling through Instagram. I'm not selling through Facebook, right?
Right.
And so what's changed about it is I've really changed my philosophy in the sense of I need to run my business that suits my personality best, right? I need to be true to what works for me. And that's really what I've shifted away from social media and all that stuff to just running my business how I feel it needs to be run. And through that, I've made some great relationships. We've been product placed in some books, which has really helped out. And that's how I want to run my business. I want to run my business through relationships, right? When you hear about me, when you buy a watch from me, I want to treat you so well that you go tell your friend about it, right? That's what I want to do. I want to call you up, leave you a voicemail, like, hey, I'm shipping your watch. If you have any questions, give me a call, whatever. That's how I want to run my business, through service. Like, we humbly serve are customers, right? I don't really necessarily care about social media. I do get business off it, but it's just not my thing.
Yeah. Amen. Well, the vibe attracts the tribe. So, whatever your energy is out there as a business consultant, I talk to people all the time, and especially our generation, they're like, I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to do social media and whatever. On the flip side of that, I do always try and shift the narrative slightly because as an entrepreneur and having a business prior to social media, it has opened up the doors for people like us on so many levels. The accessibility, the quick explanation, all of it. There's such a blessing to social media. And there's also always, of course, the downside. And it's a full-time job if it's something that is, if you're in all in, and it doesn't, it's an awesome tool. It's a privilege, but it's not always necessary. And I really like that you said you got to find what brings you joy, because at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying this process, even if you make $1 billion, we have X amount of days on this earth.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not worth, like, the constant struggle. And I think that's the, universe, God, Madonna's intel of like, you need to pivot, do something a different way. Like the audience is out there. You just have to find your way of doing it.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I much rather sell a watch to you in person and meet you for a drink and deliver your watch than mail and put it in FedEx and all this. Like, that's just, you're right. You got to do what's best for you and what works for your personality. Because if you don't, I believe ultimately it's going to be a struggle, and it's going to lead more likely to failure.
Absolutely. And, if it's quality versus quantity, you're also building a community. If you have that one-to-one interaction, you're building this trail of humans in this community where it really means that much more when you're not just wearing a phenomenal piece of equipment, if you will, or jewelry. It's got heartstrings to it. It's got an emotional tie. So it's more meaningful.
Yep.
Well, so you've got 2 watches that I saw on there. Do you want to tell us anything special, cool, neat, or what was the inspiration behind these 2 timepieces?
The timepieces. So I have 3 watches, but
3,
there's
okay.
2 black ones and 1 blue one. And the blue one is called the Great. And the Great is named after my friend Blake Alexander. It's a play on words, Alexander the Great. He's the one that gave me my watch when I was in grade school. That kind of started this entire obsession. And so I try to have a little bit of meaning behind the watches, the names at least. Some people care, some people don't care. But from a marketing standpoint, what people like about my watches is that they're designed and tested by Navy SEALs, and that's important to some people, and some people it's not important. But it's not a military watch. It's just a watch for people that are interested in a legacy and leaving a legacy for their kids. And the design and tested by Navy SEALs is kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's good.
Yeah. Functionality is critical.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who is like your target market in this? I'm curious. And again, the watch industry is just such a new territory I don't know a lot about, but are you targeting like 18 to 25, or is it usually like men over 40? Like, what is the vibe there?
Yeah, it's usually men over 40.
Okay.
And so initially my target market was fathers, right? Because I'm about building a legacy and leaving a legacy behind. And I still that's still my market. But what I found, it's interesting over time how you want to go this direction and the market takes you that direction, a different
Totally.
direction, right? And at first I was fighting it, and I was like, there's no point in fighting this. But really, what I find, I guess you can add on to my initial target market of fathers who want to leave a legacy behind and have children, is that it's really individuals who support the military community, who are big donors to the Navy SEAL Foundation, are big donors to Wounded Warriors, who read, because I was product placed in a military fiction book. It's really patriots, to be honest with you. If I could sum it up, it's patriots it's civilian patriots who want to give back to the military community. And I never intended to go after that market. It just kind of happened. But it's great. It works out well. It works out really well because it's a very symbiotic relationship. They want to help veteran businesses, and when you shop at Declan James Watch Co., not only are they helping me and supporting me, but they're also supporting the Navy SEAL Foundation. So it's kind of like it's a double win for them and it's a win for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if we were having a marketing conversation, I'd be like, of course this fits because this is you. Like the business is always extension of us. Even
Yes.
again, if we try and control it, it's always, and maybe we lack self-awareness, which every single human does in some capacity. But that consumer is exactly you. You're passionate about America. You wanted to give back. You wanted to do the hard thing. Of course, that's your consumer. Like, of course that makes sense. And I think that market is way bigger than people think. Again, a patriot is not necessarily a Democrat or Republican or whatever. It's an American, or maybe even not a born American. It's someone passionate about living here and celebrating our freedoms and the sacrifice that exists to do so. So that's awesome. Do you have any intentional around doing women's watches?
I get that a lot.
Let's go. Come on now.
I would love to grow the brand to a point where we do women's watches. So not anytime soon, because I don't wear women's watches. I don't really know what women want in watches. And right now I'm focusing on growing men's watches because that's what I know best. I think when we get to a point, God, I get this question a lot. I get this question a tremendous amount. The short answer is yes, at some point in time, but now I don't think so.
Do you ever just encourage women to wear, because even Rolex, a lot of women buy the men's watches and like they're bigger, they become more fashionable. Do you ever say these watches are either or?
Yeah, I don't market it that way, but I think I've sold a handful of watches to women.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they wear them because it's more of a jewelry piece because it's big and all that stuff on a woman's wrist than it is necessarily functional for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was watch shopping, we talked about this a little bit. I was usually looking more at the men's watches because the women's watches were so small. I didn't want them, like a dinner plate on my wrist, but the other ones were so little. I'm like, well, I don't really like that either. I kind of wish there was like an in between, but I can totally see, your watches working in any capacity, jewelry function. And, it's 2024, kind of anything goes at this point.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll get you a watch and then maybe you can test it out for me on a woman's wrist and give me valuable feedback.
I would be happy to be your product tester and I'll give you honest feedback. I don't know if I necessarily want to wear it in CrossFit, but I could give you some real feedback. Sure. I do like, though, I think our Colorado humans are really intentional about supporting Colorado brands and Colorado people. So I'm really excited that, it's born and raised here in all capacities and it's functioning. Do you do all the manufacturing and stuff? Like, tell me a little bit about the process, like where is it made? Is it made here?
So I design my watch rudimentary. Like I say, it's more like a Frankenstein drawing, right? I design it. I say, I want this, I want that. And then I send it to my company over in Hong Kong. So what a lot of people don't realize is like New York, Paris, Hong Kong, like these are big fashion markets. And let's not forget, this is Asia too. So a lot of manufacturing takes place in Asia. So I send it to a company that I work closely with in Hong Kong, and they will, because they also say, I say, this is what I want. And they actually have to design the watch, like with CAD and all that stuff. And I don't have that background. So let's say, okay, this is what you want. This is how it's going to look. This is it, right? This is your vision. And then through that process, we'll go back and forth. And then they send it to they send it to their shop to make the case, right? The metal part, if you can see that. And then I import Swiss movements, and then we put everything together and test it. So we're essentially manufactured overseas. Swiss movements in Switzerland to a certain degree, and overseas in Hong Kong. And then it all gets shipped to me, and we assemble and test it and make sure everything is good to go.
Oh man, and you made all these initial relationships at that first Hong Kong like conference or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's cool though, that it's like that big of a thing where you can streamline process, make your connects, and now years later, it still is the same thing.
And it's interesting. What's interesting, what made me feel good about this entire process. So my buddy who owns Resco watches, he said, this is where you need to go. And I was wearing one of his watches. And I told you I started off in the middle of the conference or the trade show and just circled around, and I found myself talking to someone, by the restroom. Like who pay the least amount of rent. And I'm
Yeah.
talking to
Yes.
them. I'm like, oh, you're my people. This is great. And I'm wearing his watch, and they're like, oh, we helped design that watch. I'm like, what? And they pulled out a prototype of his watch. I was like, oh, this is a sign.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
This is a
wild.
sign. Yeah.
Is the watch space like a crowded one? Like, are there a lot of companies doing watches or humans?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm considered a boutique watchmaker. It is definitely crowded. It's more crowded than I thought it was ever going to be.
Okay.
Because access to all this stuff, manufacturing, all this. I mean, you can create your own brand, and all. It's a lot easier. And so it is a crowded place for sure.
Gotcha.
More
Well,
crowded than I would like.
yeah, I hear that. Well, don't worry. Colorado will show up for you. I have faith in this. And I really do believe in your approach to not do this traditional marketing situation, social media, what have you, like really leaning into who you are. And I say this in marketing all the time of, lean into what's authentic to you. Again, so you can enjoy the process and challenge status quo. If everybody's doing something a certain way, you're missing out a huge part of the audience that isn't doing or is not doing those things that way. So like we just get so siloed in what works because of social media, because of our phone, like this is what everyone's doing. So I really encourage like challenging the status quo and taking a different leap. And I want you to unpack a little bit this opportunity to be labeled in a fiction book, because this is the most awesome, cool, random, authentic marketing opportunity that I've heard. And I'm into like all the, creative strategies across the board. Like, tell me how this like landed for you.
So I'm going to look this up real quick because I don't want to screw this up. So so this is the vet community again, right? And I don't know who, long story short, someone had said, hey, Brian, you need to talk to my friend. They're authors, right? And so these guys, when I talked to them, they weren't as big as they were, right? And so it's Andrews and Wilson's, and they write fiction books, and now they're writing for Tom Clancy. So they have just like blown up.
Yes,
but again, I don't know who introduced me to them. I actually got back from a deployment because I'm in the reserves, and I had gotten back from the deployment. I think I was like 3 days back from being on deployment, and I'm talking to these authors. And it turns out that one of them is a submariner, and one of them used to work at the Navy SEAL teams as a medic, right? And so they were writing these like Navy SEAL fiction books. Okay. And they're like, oh, we'd love to help you. It's literally like a 5-minute conversation. We'd love to help you out. Well, in fact, I'm just wrapping up one of my books. We'll just product place you. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. Like, I was like, okay, really cool. And so they wrote Declan James, the brand, into the watch. It was like maybe 3 or 4 sentences. And time had gone by because they have to edit the book. They got to do all this stuff. And I was just like, it came out. And then when it came out, I would start getting like, basically when it came out, my sales shifted from like people that I knew and people I interacted with to people I didn't know. And that was a huge game changer for me. And so that's what they did. And it was that simple. And now, and now these guys write, I think, 4 series. I'm sorry, I'm looking this up real quick.
You're good.
They write 4 series, different books. They're blowing up. So they're writing for Tom Clancy now. They have other series, and it was just the greatest thing ever. And now I have a relationship with these guys. And what they put me in was Sons of Valor. They have a Sons of Valor series. So it's about a Navy SEAL. They have 3 series in this book, or 3 books in this series. And it was like the greatest thing, the easiest thing, the best conversation that ever happened to me. And I couldn't be any more grateful for it. And so now I'm trying to collaborate with them, and they have a lot of, what do you call, pokers in the fire or whatever?
Sure, irons in the fire.
In the fire. And now that, they've got scripts that are being reviewed by Sony. They're trying to do TV shows. I was like, and if stuff takes off for them in the way that I hope it does, they're like, dude, we'll make sure that the leading actor is wearing your watch.
Oh, And this is, I love this story so much. And when I hear, I always say, like, if you're a good person doing good things, like it's going to work out. And I know that's so arbitrary, especially to people like us, when it's like, no, I got to do the work. I got to do more. Like, it's really hard to just keep the faith, and you won't sit back and chill. But sometimes the biggest blessings happen out of nowhere. Like, God Universe Madonna shows up, looks out, and the most beautiful thing happens. Things you can't even think of. Like, you couldn't even have thought of, like, you know what, I'm going to get my watch in a book. I know that product placement's going to be a thing. No, it was like totally out of the blue. And you see these good people opening up their doors, opening up their books, sharing the love, and now good things are happening for them. Like, I just think good energy and showing up for people will always serve you tenfold, and it'll come back in ways you can't better and more important in any way you could possibly plan or try and plot or try and intentionally do.
And that's why I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for Andrews and Wilson. I'm grateful for the stuff that they've done for me. I think had I not had that conversation, that relationship, I don't know. I just don't know. It would just be different, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about the vet community, is because literally it was a 5-minute conversation. Like, they're like, sure, brother, how can we help you out? I'm like, this will be easy. I'm like, what do you mean this will be easy? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
It really changed things for me.
Yeah. And a quick conversation. This is a great message for our young people. Like, get off the phone, stop texting all the days, go get out there, go shake some hands, and just get to know people. You don't even have to go out with this big intentional sale marketing thing. Just get to know people, show your authentic self, and people will show up. And now you can show up for them. Like, I mean, what if honestly Declan James pops off and you're helping facilitate, some of their books? You never know how it shakes out. And it's just cool. And dude, what a fun thing. Like, what a fun piece of the journey to throw into the trail. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like Declan James is memorialized now.
Yeah. It is. That's what I love about the podcasting, is like, once it's out there, it's out there. I guess I could take them down at some point, but you're in a book, like, you're out there, you're like Twitter. it's going to live there forever. And the legacy has been, put in writing. I actually think that fits for you on brand. It's not like the digital thing. It's like in old school writing book, like it all fits.
As you're absolutely right. As I look back, everything just watches as a legacy business. Military is a legacy thing. Books are legacy. Everything just seems to like fall perfectly in place. Some of it was intended, and some of it was like, oh my God, this is just working out for me.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Well, you're a good dude showing up doing good things. Like, I'm serious. I really do think everything is energy at the end of the day. And, we are so conditioned to just do more, train harder, have a business plan, go like, everything is like, you just try and control it. And like, when you really look at the big, beautiful things that happen, it's like, I can't believe it happened. I had nothing to do with that other than showing up and having a conversation or being right place at the right time. Or, we really do control so little at the end of the day.
Well, my biggest complaint is things are becoming inauthentic, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Customer service is inauthentic. And so, again, this is a recurring theme in my life, relationships. And so I want to be as authentic as possible and have meaningful relationships with people. And I do think at the end of the day, that's what will drive the world and is going to continue to drive the world. I just think we're getting a little bit away from that. And I hope that it'll come back around. It's funny when people buy, when I get a sale online and I don't know who it is, most people email me ahead of time or call me ahead of time, but occasionally I'll get a sale and I have no idea who it is. I have to call them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to call them and be like, hey man, like, thank you. This is what's going on. They're like, oh my God, I never expected you, the founder, to call me. I'm like, no, man, that's how we do our business. That's how we run things. And so, I mean, I think what you're saying is like, authentically be yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've experienced it firsthand.
Keep leading the charge in that. I swear to you and everyone listening, as a person in branding and marketing for over 20 years now and seen everything pre-social media and now in social media, our young people get it. They are conscious consumers. They read the details. They know the fine print. I have 9-year-olds that have cell phones and like, I don't want to be on TikTok because it affects my mental health. Like, they are different than us, and they are intentional consumers at 0 years old. And I genuinely believe companies like yours, product is awesome and everything. And even, if it was what it was, that aside, I sincerely believe they will purchase because they want to be part of a community more than they care about the product. Like they want to be a part of something that's meaningful and there's access to the human behind it more than the product is good or cool or brand or anything like that. And I'm going against my fellow branding counterparts. And I've seen it, I've lived it, and like I would put all my money in it. So I really think like you, just doing the authentic thing, which isn't necessarily the hot word on the marketing front right now.
Yeah.
But I've seen it firsthand. Our young people, you keep doing it. I really do think your target market, mid 40 plus, will show up. But at some point, it might be like, 22-year-old women in a rap video, rocking Declan James. So we never know.
Yeah. It's, I think the difference is when you're authentically you go back to like the traditional mindset, and it's always just a slow burn. There's never like the silver bullet. Whereas social media and all these algorithms and all this stuff in Amazon, it is not, it's kind of feels like it's the silver bullet, but it's like you get one shot and after that it's done. Like the brands like could go away. I don't know. That's just my theory, right?
Yeah.
It just goes back to just be yourself. It's going to be a slow burn. There's no quick riches overnight. And as long as you do that, hopefully you'll be okay.
Absolutely. And you show up, continue to do the hard thing, and it comes to fruition. You don't get fit overnight. You don't become a Navy SEAL overnight. You don't become a successful entrepreneur none of that happens.
Right.
And I think the best example is if you've ever had a cocktail or two and ordered something off Instagram and you get it 2 years later and it's like the worst quality ever. It doesn't even look like the picture.
Yeah.
That's the last time you're doing it. So I say, let all those things happen and the consumers will learn real quick. Like, it's cool. I'll order the expensive thing that's high quality, wait for it, talk to the founder and be part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Well, it's such a great thing to see emerging of worlds. I hope we have our veteran community and all the communities listening. My last podcast a couple ago was with Team Red, White, and Blue of Colorado. Yeah. So we've got some patriots out there believing. Put into universe right now. What would you love to see with Declan James? I know you got the slow burn, but like, what would be like the mountaintop?
Well, we are in the process of designing another watch. A dive watch. So I want to continue to see the brand grow, but like at the end of the day, I want to build a company that my kids can be proud of. I don't want to give my son or my grandson a watch. I want to give them a company that they are passionate about, that they want to work. If they don't want to work it, that's fine, but I want to leave them something, right? And that's, whether that's something is by example, or that something is the company, whether that's something is how to treat people. I want to leave them something. So the mountaintop is I want to continue to do this. I want to get to the point where my sons are like, oh, okay, I got it. My kids are 9 and 5 right now, so they don't quite get it. So I want to continue the business.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to give back to the veteran community, quite frankly. Since I've gotten out, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but vets got issues. There's a lot of vets that have issues. And I've talked to so many people and I'm like, what? You? Like, no way. You were hiding this so very well. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. And it breaks my heart because it just breaks my heart, because had I known, I talked to a lot of people who were active with me. And I had no idea. And then, we did this for our government. We did this for America. We did this for our fellow teammates, and it can screw people up. It can really screw people up. And it just breaks my heart because I don't like to see people struggle, at least mentally. It's tough. And because vets have done so much for me, I want to continue to give back for vets.
Amen. Yeah. What's going on is completely unfair and unjust when we have our men and women of service going overseas or what have you, just serving in general and coming back with, minimal tools to reacclimate, to talk about mental health. I know there's some things with the VA, again, 2 brothers in the military, one came back with a TBI and talked a lot of things about mental and brain health. And I just being a long-time athlete, neurofeedback, concussions, brain health has always been on my radar because of them. Also, universe has shoved me in that way unknowingly. And I'm so blessed it's there now. there's just not a lot of tools. But the upside of social media and even conversations like this is we can at least continue to facilitate the conversation and the awareness. And the more we know about it, the more we can take hold ourselves and maybe not lean on the system, which they should be there. But if they're not, we can at least advocate for one another and facilitate. Oh, you know what? I did actually just do a brain map 2 days ago with Lux Neuro, their sponsor, and
Yes.
longtime fan. They to dial in my own, brain activity, mental health, wellness. I initially did it for sports performance, but they can address PTSD, concussions, ADHD. I mean, there's so many options out there. We just have to further facilitate the conversation and the options around it of A, how are you feeling? And B, if you want to do something, we have options for you. So showing up and I think being a part of these nonprofits that are giving back, I think is massive. And it's a way us as civilians or patriots or former servicemen can really continue to show up for each other and do the right thing even if the right thing's not happening.
It's really interesting to me. And not to get political, but it's interesting to me. I think the government should be doing a lot more for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
I think there should be more appreciation for veterans. And I'm not saying this because I'm a veteran. I don't need the praise or any of that stuff, but like all the stuff, the protests, whatever it is, taking a knee, protesting for Palestine, protesting for Israel, all that stuff is possible because there's men and women that defend the Constitution. And there's not many places in this world where you can do, if you can do what you're doing in America elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But there's just nowhere else. And so I think it's a system that works well, but what I'm not sure or confident to say is that I don't know people really understand why that system works well.
I completely agree with you. And these are our human. I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but
Sure.
Humans, especially protesting on our college campuses. Some are students, some aren't. And I think that the media is getting a hold of things there.
Sure.
But to address what you're saying, I agree. I don't think there's not enough conversation of what the sacrifice is. And I do actually think a lot of humans, civilian like myself, is being, a blonde-haired female that can get freely on the mic and express my opinion. If I lived in other countries, that absolutely would not even be an option. So I do think there's an acknowledgement there. I don't think that perhaps the students or protesters or what have you are expressing it enough. And do I think we can facilitate that conversation more of like, wait, let's backtrack this. Let's understand what we're doing and why this is even possible. Yeah. Do I think we can further that conversation? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I have a friend who's always like, he's like, doesn't this stuff upset you, taking a knee for the anthem or whatever, or burning the flag? I'm like, no. He's like, why? And I'm like, because that's the system at work. That's what America's about, is freedom of expression. And that's what they're doing. I would be a hypocrite if I said that bothered me.
I love that. Well, and here's the thing. We get so caught up in labels, marketing, branding, what have you, but Republican, Democrat, American, not American. Like the thing is, if you can take some time to just talk to someone, just like business, just open the door slightly. You don't even have to agree. A lot of times you will see you really do have core values in common and you want the same things, even if you believe different things. Mutually exclusive things can harmoniously coexist without them being the same. Like it can be a conversation and an understanding and even agree to disagree. But 9 times out of 10, we all want this. We want safety. We want to be seen and we want to be heard. We want freedoms. How we get to those in games is a little bit different. But if you just open up the door a little, you can at least find a small shred of common ground and core values.
Well, I think you're right. And I think the majority of Americans care and they have a caring heart. I mean, just think about how many nonprofits are out there you could be for dogs, veterans, abused women, abused men, whatever it might be. There is a nonprofit for whatever issue ails America. And that's because people care. People genuinely care. It's just, I find it interesting. I don't think it's easy to say you don't care about someone when you can't see them or you don't look at them. But if it's easy for me to bash the homelessness problem in Denver. But when push came to shove, if a homeless guy came up to me and was like, generally, hey, I need some help. Can you help me? I would absolutely do it in a heartbeat because I think we just forget that.
Absolutely.
We're going down a different path, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to bring it full circle, a lot of the people experiencing homelessness are veterans. Like there's a whole
Yeah.
connection there of our disconnect because we haven't managed the mental health conversation, coming home from service. So I'm completely with you. I think the main takeaway is really just keep the door open enough to facilitate a conversation, just like your business. Keep it in real life. Maybe get off the media, maybe get off your cell phone. And I love, this is where I love marketing, branding, and goods and whatnot, because you wear the message or the watch or the t-shirt or the podcast, like wear what you believe in and put it out there, because you could walk in with a Declan James watch and be like, oh my God, you know Brian, how do you know this? And it's like, yeah, because the world is actually small, and the vibration of things, like your humans will find you and you'll find your humans. So it's weird how it shakes out, but I agree with you that the continued consciousness of what's going on, how it's happening, I think is a good little message for us all.
Yeah.
Where do we find you? Tell us, website, your Instagram page, your favorite. Hit us with the details.
So if you're on Instagram, please follow me, because I'd love to get the Instagram following up easily.
There you go.
It's at Declan James Watch Co. My website is declanjameswatchco.com. It's really declanjameswatchco.com or at Declan James Watch Co. And something I didn't mention that I really do want to mention is that the name of my company is named after my oldest son, because this is what I wanted to give. I only had one son at the time. So I'm going to have to start another company. And I was going to say,
you better keep it even, man. That's going to be a war.
It is going to be a war. And I think what's going to happen is my youngest son is going to want to, I wouldn't be surprised if my youngest son wanted to take over Declan James Watch Co. And then my oldest son wants to take over whatever business I start for my other son.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to start a whole second business in all seriousness?
I at some point I will, yes.
Okay.
And I'm very conscious about that. If I buy something for one son, I will buy something for another son. If I do something for one son, I will do something for the other son. And so oftentimes I will, that's what I do. Yeah. Is like everything I buy is in double. If I buy like silver dollars for one son, I'm getting it for the other son, because I don't want him to feel left out. I don't want him to think that I cared more about one versus the other just because you have a company named after you.
For sure. That's my parents were always good about, there was 4 of us, so it got expensive, I'm sure. But it was always very equal. That was one of my, like, especially my mom, like her thing. Like, so I think that's good. And I'm curious to see what the second company is. Maybe one will run the other's company and the other one will want to run the other's company. So you'll just, they'll have options. Last question I ask everybody. Sure. We kind of already covered it with Declan James, but just in your personal or professional world, what is success to you?
For my business, success is getting to a point where it's bringing in money and that I can help other people. If it brings in more money, if I get more sales, cures everything, right? So increase sales, increase, what's the right word? I want more people to know about me, because if I can bring in more money, I can donate more money, I can help more, right? Like that's the purpose. We want to grow. That's success. But I think for my personal life, success is continuing on a path of growth and happiness. And so as long as at the end of the day, I'm at a place where I'm happy, my kids are happy, everyone else is happy and healthy, like that's success for me. There's no drama, there's no anxiety, there's no nothing. Like I've learned, I'm trying to grow, but I've learned recently that's like what my happiness means. And that to me is success. It doesn't, I mean, if you can separate these two, it's not money. It doesn't have to be money for me, but the business, I want the business to continue to grow.
Absolutely. Amen. Is there, and this, my guess, actual last question, is there anything you do to maintain that happiness that you would want to share with the people?
I think right now it's CrossFit. Like that's when I go do CrossFit, I can leave everything on the gym floor, whatever it is, and I can come back and I can be exhausted. But what I've learned over the years is that my definition of happiness changes. Yeah. And if I don't change with that definition, then I'm not happy, right? And so it's, what was right then is not necessarily right now. So I'm trying to catch up to what is right now and let go of what was right back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Continuous evolution. Absolutely.
Yeah, continuous evolution. You said it there you go.
I got you. We're both post-workout, so some of the brain cells are firing at certain levels, but collectively we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time and energy. I love this. I didn't even know we had all that the Colorado background in common, but again, universe, God Madonna looks out. I appreciate your time and energy. I can't wait to see this situation pop off. I think you have lots of intentional humans heading your way, and we'll be excited to not only rock the brand and the watch, but be, like I said, a part of the community. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I know you're kind of a big deal, so to be on a big deal show.
Totally. We totally are. No, don't tell my dad that. He'll be like, what? I look more than she does.
Does he listen to your podcast, all your podcasts? I know you have a very good relationship with your father. I'm just curious. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think my family I think they listen to some of them. We're at 200 episodes at this point. So I think they listen to some of them, but not really. I know you listened to the one with Jake Plummer, and podcasting is funny because like, I'm not even a great listener just because mine, it's a lot of work. And once I get it done, I'm like, we got to shift to something else. But podcasting's funny. I feel like it's you either listen or you don't. And it's still kind of this evolving, social media point of communication, however you want to label it, it's coming around. So I think that they were never listened. He's 72, so it's not necessarily the demographic of the traditional podcast listener. But I think it's starting to become more of a thing. Like an hour-long conversation is a lot to digest, but it's getting there. I do try and watch what I say though when it's about family, and I try and keep it more about me and my experience. But you know how that is. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yes. Well, we'll catch up soon, and check out TNT. We'll get some highlights on the actual watches and stuff. So stay tuned, and we'll continue to highlight our fitness fam. You know how it is.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been
a
pleasure.
Ryan.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.